was formed in 1925. There was a group of doctors that met at the Royal Perth Hospital, and the reason that it was formed was to use a term in its purpose, was to protect the character and interests of the members.
When I became a member of council, I think there were about 1,200 doctor members.
Oh, it was nothing. I mean, it was tiny. It was a very quiet organisation, and even when I was asked to join the old MDA Council, it was said reasonably accurately that all it was 4 meetings a year, 4 council meetings a year and an AGM. And the annual income when I joined in 1972, that calendar year was 90,000. We all paid $60 a year.
Until 1989, MDA WA was involved in a scheme of cooperation with MPS. In 1989, MDA made the significant decision to separate from MPS and go it alone.
I think the first most significant step that was taken by MDA was the decision in 1989 to go it alone. That was a really courageous decision for an organisation to make.
But it became obvious we were going to have to set up that whole insurance infrastructure, even though we weren't offering insurance policies. And out of that grew what was initially called the Medical Indemnity Company of Western Australia, MICWA.
Then, in 1992, MDA went out to Lloyd's and purchased its own reinsurance. At about this time, MICWA, the Medical Indemnity Company of WA, was formed for this purpose. These were the first steps towards the creation of MDA National some years later.
We called a special meeting of members, and I can remember using a presentation to explain to the membership as to why we were making that change. And I well recall a member from the floor saying, look, we've elected the board to make decisions on our behalf. If the doctors who we elect on the board have made that decision, we will support it because we know they're acting in the best interest.
We had for some time been aware that we needed to be more than just a state-based organisation, and 3 years later, under David Watson's presidency, it was decided that the organisation should become national.
But that was when we said to ourselves in 1999, we can do this. And that led to the launching of MDA National.
One of the unique things about MDA WA transiting into MDA National has been it's been a journey. We have an office in every capital city in Australia. I think there's a great deal of satisfaction that applies to our board and our staff to say, yep, we are now truly a national organisation.
In the early 2000s, the insurance industry was shaken by the fall of some of its biggest companies. This led to what was known as the medical indemnity crisis.
So when this crash occurred, it was no surprise to MDA at all. Peter had already predicted it, he knew it was actually happening. And let me tell you, Peter played a very significant role in coming to the rescue.
When I came on in 2002, the industry had a major collapse. The major provider in the eastern states collapsed, and therefore it just shook the industry. It was like an earthquake for the industry.
So we had a nucleus of an office in Melbourne, and a number of doctors were looking for another organisation who could provide them with indemnity. At that particular stage, we were able to take advantage of doctors looking for a safer new home, new MDO, and we very rapidly expanded our office space into the eastern seaboard.
I think the MDA National has always had the ethos of doctors for doctors.
MDA National was like a family. Those sorts of values of inclusiveness, belongingness and generosity that we sort of, I suppose, cultivate amongst our staff, hopefully then translate into how we embrace our membership.
The strength for MDA has been around 4 members, governed by members of 4 members.
We've run a very strong company by way of ethics, by way of governance, and and with the interest of the doctors always in the background and trying to build it up so that the doctor's security was guaranteed.
When we went on our own in 1989, if I recall, we probably had no more than $1 million worth of funds. Today we have funds just under $160 million. So if you look at the growth as an organisation, we've now got an organisation which is extremely well capitalised. And that money belongs to the members, by the way. It doesn't belong to external shareholders. And one of the statements that I do make to staff, particularly when we have new staff going through induction, I always say to them, we must respect the past and embrace the future. Now, what I mean by that is that we must remember where we came from, why we're here, and what we're doing for the future to make sure that we continue to provide contemporaneous service to our members depending on the requirements of that particular point in time. But we should never, ever forget from where we come from.